The first great phase of Mozart's brief life was that of the travelling child prodigy, a ferociously gifted young performer and composer who grew into the genius that, working within the restrictions of his day, began to rewrite the musical rules. But there's another facet to Mozart, the adult thinker, aware of the bigger picture, passionately attached to the progressive values of the Enlightenment, a composer at the height of his formidable powers, determined to succeed in the most difficult and lucrative area of all, opera.
Tamino, have I offended you? Do you not love me anymore? Papageno, at least tell me what is the matter with my friend. Oh, this is worse than death.
The Magic Flute, written at the end of his short life, stands as the ultimate expression of Mozart's ambition to communicate the complexity of human life and the depth of human emotion through music and theatre.
"10 years earlier, and Mozart's at the crossroads. At 25, he's too old to be a prodigy, but he's yet to prove himself as a mature composer. So, here he is in provincial Salzburg, where there's neither a good orchestra nor an opera house. He's still living with his father and sister, and despite having served his apprenticeship with over a dozen stage works, he's still desperate for things to happen.
This desire to write opera is so strong. I hear an opera being discussed and I'm consumed with envy for its composer. It should be me in that theatre with my orchestra tuning their instruments, my singers putting on their costumes. Oh, sister, I've become quite beside myself. I can hear my music.
In Salzburg, there wasn't a hope of such a commission. The Archbishop had closed down our theatre company, which was a tragedy for all the people of Salzburg, whose rage for the theatre was immense. Our town looked to the coming of a company of strollers with as much eagerness as the inhabitants of Siberia looked to the return of spring. Blessed was the season that brought us the company of Emmanuel Schikaneder.
Hello, Emmanuel Schikaneder. I believe I'm expected. Oh, dear boy. Wolfgang, how nice to see you.
Salzburg was always a good town to play, and when I bumped into young Mozart, we hit it off immediately. Well, like me, he was a seasoned travelling performer. We soon became firm friends with the whole Mozart family. We took coffee together, gave them free tickets. I demonstrated my various roles, my dandy, my tyrant, my Hamlet, my fool.
Sir, The actor and impresario Emmanuel Schikaneder, who arrived in Salzburg town today.
This is an honour, sir.
Herr Schikaneder.
Emmanuel, this is my dear sister Nannerl.
Oh, my dear. What a pleasure it is to meet you.
Will you take some wine, Herr Schikaneder?
Oh, well, I never refuse an offer of wine. Thank you very much indeed. He was absolutely a man of the theatre.
Delightful.
It was in his blood. We often spoke of the need for a true German language theatre. I remember him saying to me, I don't believe Italian opera can last forever, and besides, I'm German. I prefer German opera, even if it is more difficult to get a commission.
Herr Schikaneder, will you honour us with a song?
Oh, I hardly think this is the... Well, as it happens, I do have a little something which your brother may be familiar with. If I could... In our repertoire, we already had a musical play that the prodigious Mozart had written at the tender age of 12. Bastian und Bastienne.
My beloved, so enchanting, soon I'll see your lovely face. Your sweet charms will end my yearning. Wealth could never take your place, could never, never take your place.
Oh, Schikaneder, what a fine fellow you are.
Dear boy, will you write us an aria for our new play?
Give me your text and I will write you something tasty.
Wonderful! Damn it, but on that occasion things were cut short. Wolfgang was suddenly away to Munich with an important opera commission in his pocket. Oh, I was truly sorry to see him go.
I shan't forget the sight of Schikaneder running like a goose through the streets of Salzburg, waving goodbye to my son's carriage. And the aria... Every time Wolfgang wrote, he made a different excuse. He missed the mail coach, and surely it would be on the next one. I had to tell such lies, and I am not a good liar.
Schikaneder and Mozart begin a friendship that won't mature for another decade when they'll write the Magic Flute together. But here and now, Mozart desperately needs to find an official, paid position. He's on his way to Munich because the Elector of Bavaria has commissioned him to write an Italian opera in the serious style.
Idomeneo will tell the story of a hero's return from the Trojan Wars, a typical mythological subject for the formal and stylized opera seria, or serious opera. Where another composer might be tempted to rewrite or break the rigid rules, Mozart will inhabit the form from the inside and expand its possibilities.
And where was my son more likely to succeed than in the theatre? He had the benefit of my advice. Don't neglect the popular style. Write for the unmusical public as well as the musical ones.
The author of the text was Abbe Varesco, chaplain to Leopold's employer, the Archbishop, back in Salzburg. Leopold readily agreed to be the middleman between the poet and his son. He couldn't know it, but this would be his last detailed involvement in one of Mozart's projects.
I lived every moment of rehearsing and writing that work. I became indispensable. We corresponded every day. Varesco soon tired of changing the verses, but Wolfgang was determined that all the singing should have the natural flow of conversation. He'd say, well, this is a good verse, that one could be more dramatic, this one could be shorter, this one will get rid of it altogether.
His childhood years on the road had exposed Mozart to the best art and entertainment that Europe had to offer. Now in Idomeneo, he had the chance to demonstrate his dramatic instincts.
Damn this cold!
What I need most of all right now are cheerful spirits, a clear head, and the inclination to work. Dear Papa, the foot baths that you recommended have brought me little relief. And the singers make my blood boil.
Oh, we'd known the principals for some time. Dorothea Wendling charmingly played a Trojan princess, and her sister-in-law Elizabeth took the part of the other princess, Elettra. He did not, however, like Del Prato, a castrato who sang the part of the young prince, thinking him rotten to the core, a wretched singer, and a worse actor. But it was the king, Idomeneo, he found most difficult. He had known the singer Anton Raff for many years.
Raff is the best and most faithful person in the world, and one must show him respect because of his grey hair. But it frustrates me that he is so set in his old routines, despite his enthusiasm for one of the arias I have written for his voice.
I wake up in the morning and I'm singing it, and I go to my bed at night and I am still singing your song.
Well, you're most welcome, Hera.
It makes him easy to compose for, if you are happy to be conventional and let him rattle on for hours. But I have no desire to bore the audience. The old man is too fond of singing his chopped noodle.
We need to feel your pain, your desperation. In this aria, you're railing against fate. And for that to happen, it must come from within. If it comes from within, then the audience will believe it. And for your actions should be a natural extension of the music. Are you with me?
Yes, of course.
Good. From the beginning again. His voice is still a lovely thing to hear. But he pays no attention to expression and now finds it increasingly difficult to reach some of the notes.
Raff's For del Mar is a typical bravura aria, traditionally designed to show off a singer's virtuosity, hence these elaborately decorated vocal lines. Mozart's determination was to put all his music right at the centre of the action, driving the plot inexorably forward.
Because of the old man's limitations, he chipped away at the text, so that the singer's limitations became both disguised and made glorious.
Dearest friend, if I could change one note of this quartet, believe me, I would do so. Sing it through with the others and you'll see that I'm right.
Mozart wanted to hold his audience's attention every step of the way, so any changes he made to Varesco's libretto avoided an unnecessary diversion or some useless piece of action. The notes and the music must propel the drama at all times. Now, no one had ever behaved before in this fashion in the rather sedate world of opera seria. He wanted scenes to dissolve into each other. So, take the end of Juan del Mar, for instance. You get... Now that ought to be the end, but it isn't. Chi mai? There's Electra, we're into the next scene. Mozart even said, in his own words, that at the end of the act there should be the greatest possible noise for the shortest possible time, so the audience have no time to cool down before they have to applaud. And his first audience, who invited himself to the last rehearsal, was none other than his patron, the Elector of Bavaria.
The last rehearsal was magnificent, and all the music is as it should be, threatening a storm. You can hear the sea, and everybody is now pleased. When we had finished, the Elector shouted, "Bravo! This opera is charming. No music has ever had such an effect on me. It will bring you great honor." Then he said, "Who would think such great thoughts came from so small a head?"
Who indeed would think that such great thoughts came from so small a head? A compliment of sorts, but still no court position. He left us all to go to Vienna.
It was here in Vienna, the busy and vivid city which was the political, cultural and economic capital of the Austrian Empire, that Mozart settled for what was to prove to be the last decade of his life. With its vast, knowledgeable audience and 5 thriving theatres, the city will nurture his sense of drama and so enable him to transform the operatic conventions of his day.
The final 25 years of the 18th century were a time of political change across Europe. The old aristocracy were in decline, and the middle class were growing more prosperous, more numerous, and developing their own political ideas.
And Mozart's decision to base himself in Vienna put him right at the centre of this.
His new hope was the patronage of Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II of Austria, an absolute monarch with a passion for music and an agenda for social reform.
It is the will of His Majesty, Joseph II, Emperor of Austria, that the practice of torture to extract confession be abolished.
Further, continue.
And that the death penalty be replaced by the sentence of lifelong hard labour.
Deterrence being the key.
And further, that the royal hunting grounds be opened to the Viennese public as a park for their recreation and pleasure.
A place of leisure for all men, from one who esteems them.
And so, a royal hunting park became a people's paradise. Joseph, ever aware of the danger of revolution, was keen to encourage the German middle class whilst restricting the privileges of his Italianate nobility. And in the process, theatre became something of a political football. In an age before TV and cinema, theatre was more than just entertainment. It was a forum for up-to-date thinking, new ideas, moral comment. So, whilst the aristocracy were flocking to the gorgeous, rarefied and witty world of Italianate opera, a new German audience were eagerly awaiting their own operas, their own popular culture.
Soon after Mozart had set up residence in Vienna, our unforgettable emperor, Joseph II, formed a plan so worthy of the Austrian emperor of alienating taste from Italian operas by supporting the German language Singspiel. Thus would he encourage a more patriotic outlook. Accordingly, he assembled Vienna's best singers and commissioned a German opera from that upcoming talent, Mozart.
And Mozart was just the man for the job.
My fervent desire is to help forward the German language theatre. I wish to do honour to the whole German-speaking people. I thank God that I'm a good, God-fearing German.
The abduction from the Seraglio was a new form of popular musical, mixing dialogue with songs. The light-hearted and exciting story of a noble hero's bungled attempt to rescue his beautiful lover from the clutches of the Turkish Pasha and his larger-than-life overseer, Osmin.
Oh, wie will ich triumphieren, wenn sie euch zum Brief kassieren. Die Hälse schnüren zu, schnüren zu. Und die Hälse schnüren zu, schnüren zu. Schleicht nur säuberlich und leise ihre verdammten Ahrensmäuse. Unser Ohr entdeckt euch schon, und ehe ihr uns könnt entspringen, seht ihr euch in unseren Schlingen und erhaschet euren Lohn. Und erhaschet euren Lohn. Schleicht nur säuberlich und leise ihre verdammten Ahrensmäuse. Unser Ohr entdeckt euch schon, entdeckt euch schon, entdeckt euch schon. Ha, wie will ich triumphieren, wenn sie euch zum Brief verführen. Die Hälse schnüren zu, schnüren zu, schnüren zu, schnüren, schnüren, schnüren zu, schnüren, 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 schnüren zu. Und die Hälse schnüren zu, und die Hälse schnüren zu, schnüren zu, schnüren zu, schnüren, schnüren, schnüren zu, schnüren, 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 schnüren zu. Und die Hälse schnüren zu, und die Hälse schnüren zu.
This Singspiel created a widespread sensation. I was witness of the enthusiasm which it caused among cognoscenti and amateurs alike when it was performed. It was as if all we'd previously heard and known had not really been music at all. And the cunning Italians soon saw that such a keen German mind posed a threat to their foreign plottings. It exposed their childish tinklings. Envy now awoke, with all the sharpness of Italian poison.
With our mutual friend's Turkish piece, he seems to think he has the Emperor in his pocket.
But have you heard what His Excellency said?
No. Do tell.
Too beautiful for our ears, dear Mozart, but an enormous number of notes.
Our composer's reply: just as many notes, Your Majesty, as are necessary. How much do noble dignity and frankness go with great genius.
And whilst wooing the emperor with his clever political choice, he was also wooing his future wife, Constanza, who shares her name with the heroine of the opera.
Ach, Constanze, ach, mein Leben. Wo bist, mein Herz Freund, mein Herz Freund? Wollen lass ihn weg, sie küssen.
It's my opinion that the influence of his romantic mood on the composition of this opera is there for all to hear. Everybody knows how it's brimming with sweet thoughts and languishing love.
However, in a typical policy U-turn, Joseph decides to throw his weight behind the Italian opera.
German musical entertainments are all very well. But if you want the aristocracy to take notice, you need to address them in Italian.
Chameleon-like, Mozart sets about redesigning himself as a composer of Italian opera. Problem is, the texts he's had up until now have been poor, more or less off the peg jobs. And what he desperately needs now is a collaborator whose talents come close to matching his own. Enter Lorenzo da Ponte, who, when he wrote his memoirs at the age of 80, vividly recalled the time when, 50 years earlier, as court pert to Joseph II, he had first encountered Mozart.
I told him, in my opinion, to prepare an opera, it is necessary to know more than how to write verse. One must write so that the accents of the poetry respond to the music. He laughed and said he knew my poet's tricks, and in opera, poetry had to be an obedient daughter of the music.
Your words must be written solely for the music, and not shoved in hither and thither to suit some miserable rhyme, which, by God, contributes absolutely nothing to a theatrical representation, whatever it may be. And few can do this well, Lorenzo.
Wolfgang, one needs a musical ear and long experience. And then I said, if the words of a poet are nothing but a vehicle for the notes or the cue for action, why do you not then just use the words from a doctor's prescription, a furniture catalogue, or even a spelling book?
Verses are indispensable for music, but rhymes for the sake of rhyming harmful. Words, couplets, verses that can ruin a composer's whole idea.
I believe that poetry is the door to music. Inside all may be handsome, but nobody can see these internal beauties if the door is locked.
Then, if you agree to alter and even omit according to my wishes, I think we'll be able to work together.
So it was, we talked over a myriad of options. Then one day, he asked me if I could easily reduce to an opera this French comedy called The Marriage of Figaro, which had been causing quite a bit of a stir in Paris. The proposition pleased me well enough. But there was one very great difficulty to overcome. A short time before, the Emperor had, on the grounds that it was too outspoken for a genteel audience, forbidden this comedy's performance.
It is the will of His Majesty that the police censor reject this play entirely.
Signor Contino, il chitarrino le suonerò, il chitarrino le suonerò, sì, le suonerò, sì, le suonerò.
What was it about Beaumarchais' Marriage of Figaro that made it such a dangerous commodity? The play had become a European scandal with its overt criticism of the landed gentry and its republican leanings. It even has that speech where Figaro says to his master, "What have you done to deserve such advantages? You took the trouble to be born and nothing more." Da Ponte cuts the more direct revolutionary statements and substitutes social comedy for social satire. If the opera had been in German, it could have been perceived as agitating social change, but because it was in Italian, the language of the aristocracy, it spoke directly to that class as a moral critique.
Saprò, 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 ma piano, 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 piano.
I am of the belief that all men are created equal at birth. From our parents we receive only life itself, and in this there is not the slightest difference between king, count, merchant and peasant. Where the aristocracy abuse this natural law, I will first hold up a mirror. Then I will come down upon them like a wolf.
L'arte schermendo, l'arte adoprando, dico pungendo, dilla scherzando, tutte le macchine rovescerò, rovescerò. L'arte schermendo, l'arte adoprando, dico pungendo, dilla scherzando, tutte le macchine rovescerò, tutte le macchine rovescerò.
The interesting thing about Se vuol ballare is that the words weren't in the original play. Da Ponte penned them. But what makes it really exciting is what Mozart does. He brings us much closer to the subversive zeal of the original by couching these rather revolutionary words with an aristocratic minuet. So Figaro is having this imaginary conversation with his master when he's saying, I'm going to be in charge, not you. And the music surrounding it is of utter nobility.
Signor Contino, il chitarrino le suonerò, il chitarrino le suonerò, sì, le suonerò, sì, le suonerò.
The Emperor allows that your Figaro should criticize his master.
If that master should act as this Count does, seeking to seduce and corrupt another's betrothed. Well, His Excellency knows many in his own court who are looser than our Count. This piece will speak to them in a language they understand.
And the poor Countess, oh, how she knows she's lost the love of her husband.
But she's not a helpless woman. Like you, she is strong and resourceful. Read on there.
Porgy Amor has these incredible long lines of intense suffering. But, as the music shows you, this is not, repeat not, a woman lying down to take it. There's heroism here, and cunning as well. After all, you have to understand and believe that the Count chose her. The music has these great sort of swirls of harmony. It's in F major, which is a lovely open key, and it's deep and rich and burnished, like a good Bordeaux.
She will join forces with the servant Figaro and his beloved Susanna, and together they will trap the Count.
And there is no doubt of Susanna's love for Figaro.
I'll let the music answer that question. Here.
Alto, alto, signor Conte, mi occhi son più pronte,
In The Marriage of Figaro, Mozart's genius for ensemble writing reaches its zenith with complex conversations that crisscross but never clash. The great thing that opera affords to any composer is the opportunity to articulate several different points of view simultaneously. And of course, in the hands of someone like Mozart, it's elevated into a completely different stratosphere. He had this amazing ability to inhabit a form with complete artistic freedom, and then to look on it from the outside, in a sense to be looking at the whole of humanity, with huge wisdom.
Senti questa!
Our world is so full of hurt for women. Tell me you will never turn a cold shoulder to me, Wolfgang.
Oh, my dear little wife, who is quite plump, but only around the middle. I kiss your hands 1,000 times. We did not marry to live a life of vexation and quarrel, but to live in peace and happiness.
I
opera's first performance in Vienna, some of the singers made deliberate mistakes out of hatred and envy. Their intention was to bring about the opera's downfall. I tell you, when this piece was performed in my hometown, Prague, Mozart's art triumphed completely.
Will you dance with me? Well, another time, then!
How accurately the subtlety of your melodies expresses the meaning of the poet's words.
It took me a while to trust De Ponte, you know. These Italian gentlemen can be very civil to your face, but behind their smiles...
Given the unpleasant professional rivalry and relative lack of success in Vienna, Figaro only ran for 9 performances, why didn't he simply move on to somewhere like Prague, where he was more appreciated? I think it's possibly because he was determined to succeed on his own terms. He'd adopted Vienna as his home and so had to prove himself to the city. Anything less was true failure.
May I address you as a friend? Here, we appreciate the true value of your works. Come and live in Prague.
True. I met with all possible courtesies and honour here. And Prague's indeed a very beautiful city. But I'm homesick. I'm longing to be back in Vienna and the arms of my dear Constanza. Here in Prague, people talk of nothing but Figaro. No opera draws audiences but Figaro. Nothing can be played, sung or whistled except Figaro. Young people fly about in sheer delight to Figaro arranged for dancing. Nothing. Nothing but Figaro.
The success of our piece was as complete as we could desire. Theatre managers would cry, "Long live Mozart, long live De Ponte. As long as they exist, we shall never starve."
Coffee, Master.
No time, Primus?
Master. Thank you, Primus.
The Magic Flute is one of the most extraordinary works Mozart ever wrote. In fact, it's one of the most extraordinary operas ever written. It represents the culmination of all Mozart's social and political beliefs, eloquently expressed through his music.
2 minutes, Mr. Schikaneder.
The path that started with the Domeneo developed through Figaro and the other operas he wrote with Da Ponte and reaches its sublime height in the Magic Flute. And whereas his Italian operas had been written for the Italian opera house in the city centre, this one was written for the suburban theatre and a mainly middle-class audience.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Emmanuel Schikaneder.
Everyone here, good. Actors and actresses of the Free House Theatre, we are to have the honor to perform for the first time a grand German opera in 2 acts. The Magic Flute, written by your humble servant, Emmanuel Schikaneder, proprietor of said theatre, with music composed by Kapellmeister and Imperial Royal Chamber composer, Herr Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Who, out of respect for a gracious public, not to mention friendship for the writer of the play, will now lead us through our present rehearsals. Ah, our own sweet nightingale of the high notes, at last. Our diva of the dazzling upper reaches of the human voice.
My apologies, Emmanuel, and respect to you, my dear brother-in-law. What of my part?
Ah, Josefa. Your part will fit you like a perfectly tailored set of clothes. Queen of Night. At the beginning, the audience will think you good and magnificent, but by the end, they will know you to be magnificently wicked.
And Anna here will play your daughter, Pamina. Ben, You are the hero, Tamino, who carries the magic flute itself. And for my own part, why, I'm Papageno, the simple bird catcher. My trade is catching birds, you know. I spread my net and in they go, and all men know me as a friend throughout the land from end to end.
Mozart and Schikaneder worked fast to construct a German opera that would, on one level, delight its audience, but on a deeper plane would carry secrets and truths that might enlighten that audience.
Hey, you!
What, me?
Tell me, good fellow, who are you?
Who am I? Stupid question. I'm a man like you. Who might you be?
I am a prince.
A what?
When at the beginning of the opera Prince Tamino loses his way whilst out hunting, his chance encounter with the peasant birdcatcher Papageno launches them both on an epic quest towards self-discovery.
Many thousands.
Hey, maybe I could drum up some business with me birds. I think that's very good, don't you? Entertainment with a serious message. That's the tasty broth. Some passion, some comedy, lovely ladies, charming young fellows singing like starlings, good tunes a cabbie can whistle, and the enlightened message that one man is as good as another man, regardless of birth.
Bezaubernd schön, wie noch kein Auge je gesehen. Ich fühle es, wie dies Götterbild mein Herz mit neuer Regung füllt.
The orchestral musicians that Mozart normally wrote for were as highly skilled and disciplined as today's players, but Schikaneder's house band were not up to quite the same standard, so he kept his scoring simple. But as ever, he turned this into a strength with arrangements that are economical, yet supremely potent.
Dies etwas kann ich zwar nicht nennen.
In this aria, Tamino gradually falls in love with Pamina whilst gazing at her portrait, and the most understated of violin lines delicately, almost subliminally, anticipates, even leads his emotions.
Soll die Empfindung Liebe sein? Ja, ja.
Josepha.
Giesecke, tell me quickly, how is the theatre set for my Queen of the Night?
The theatre, madam, has been transformed into a chamber of the night strewn with stars. We have built and painted an ingenious backcloth in which there are many holes. Cleverly, behind each one I have arranged a lantern with a lens.
Never mind your oily rag talk. Is it a firmament fit for a star-blazing queen? Is it...
Mozart and I were lodge brothers, though he was this honoured genius and I was but Schikaneder's stage manager. One step up from the theatre cat. All enter the lodge as equals and progress from apprentice to master according to their merits or their own efforts. Who is knocking?
One who wishes to enter.
Enter, fellow of the craft.
Brother Giesecke, they tell me you have something for me from Schikaneder.
Yes, words for a scene with two armed men who instruct the hero.
He who treads this path of trials becomes pure through fire, water, air, and earth. Very good. If he can overcome the fear of death, he will ascend from earth to heaven. Truth, brother.
Mozart's time in Vienna coincided with the brief flourishing of Freemasonry in Austria. The lodge was a forum for enlightened views and new ideas, and Mozart embraced their philosophy wholeheartedly. But in the nervous social upheaval taking place at the end of the 18th century, Freemasonry, with its symbols and secrets, began to be seen as a potential hotbed of revolutionary ideas. Mozart, politically astute as ever, perhaps wrote the Magic Flute to show Freemasons a new, more open way ahead, as well as bringing their ideals to a wider audience.
May I ask, how is the progress on our theatre's great opera?
With my dear wife away in her spa, I'm often so bored that to write an aria is a relief.
So it is true. The piece concerns the secrets of the craft.
The piece contains the wisdom of the craft. We must open the gates of beauty and wisdom for those who wish to cross the threshold. And with a theatre manager willing to produce German opera for a German audience. But enough. I've allowed my tongue free rein, which is so rarely possible these days. You get drunk after every such outpouring of the heart and never do any damage to your health.
And this is Herr Schickenader's opinion?
Well, your employer may have no time for the lodge, but he well knows the trials a man must pass through to prove himself worthy.
I became a Freemason, not out of curiosity or selfishness, but through a sincere regard for their exalted company. From their sanctuary, despite the secrecy, radiate glimmers of nobility, humanity, wisdom, teachings which can enlighten and enrich a man.
Josepha Hofer, the original Queen of Night, was Mozart's sister-in-law. He knew her voice and its particular qualities and knew exactly how to exploit them.
Josepha!
How hard, how fast, and how high he could push her.
Try and convince me. Convince me I can be a hero. Look at me, look at me. To me. That's it. To me, to me. To me. Get off the stage, please.
With a voice like mine, any theatre in Vienna would have begged to have me. And I could have earned 3, 6, 9 times what Schickenader paid me. And let me tell you, not all parts were as good as this.
For my own part, I write to amuse the public. I've no wish to appear more learned than I am. I'm an actor and director, just as Mozart is a composer and musician. And above all else, we work for success at the box office.
Der Vogelfänger bin ich auch stets lustig, heißer Hopsatzer, ich Vogelfänger bin bekannt, bei alt und jung im weiß mit den Logen umzugehen und mich auf Zweifel zu verstehen. Drum kann ich froh und lustig sein, denn alle Vögel sind daheim. Mädchen wären mein, so tauschte ich Zucker ein, die welche mir am liebsten wär, der gäb ich gleich den Zucker her. Und küsste sie mich zärtlich dann, wär sie mein Weib und ich ihr Mann. Sie schlief an meiner Seite ein, ich wiegte wie ein Kind ein.
The enormous excitement surrounding the first performances of the Magic Flute must have felt incredible to Mozart. Everything had come together. Everything he wanted and needed to express, and to an audience that he both passionately believed in and wanted to engage. And perhaps it's all best summed up by Archifühls, an aria which holds a mirror up in front of us all, the personification of desire, love, and loss. Archifühls is the most tremendous outpouring of emotion, of love really, and at the end of the day love is right at the centre of everything Mozart wrote, certainly in opera. Opera is the greatest performing art form in my view because it's the best possible combination of all the performing arts, and therefore in the hands of a genius like Mozart it has a transcendent power to change not only the characters within the drama but also the audience.
Dearest, best little wife, I've just come from the opera. As usual, a full house. Your sister was seething and magnificent. And dear Schikaneder got his encore for man and wife. But what pleases me most is the silent applause. The reputation of our opera grows. Some only see it, but others really hear it. If only you were here in Vienna. A mutual friend of ours, you know who I mean, had a box tonight. He laughed at everything. I nearly called him an utter ass. At first I was patient. I drew his attention to this truth or that wisdom, but his behaviour was so boorish it became too much for me. You papageno, I cried. I fear he didn't even understand my insult. Primus just entered with fried pork cutlets. Que gusto, little dove, my pretty. I eat to your health in your spa.
What time is it? 11, sir.
Perhaps you're already asleep in your little spa. I don't want to wake you. I kiss you 1,000,000 times and am, as ever, your Mozart.